All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. And if you are a return listener, welcome home. If it's your first time, welcome. Today on the podcast, I am connecting with Samantha Skelly, who is an OG and master in the breathwork space. And we've had some connections in the past through mutual friends, and now we're finally linking up. And I'm excited to share her work and breathwork as a whole, because I think it's something that is can be easily incorporated into one's routine, and I don't think people understand the depth of what breathwork
Mm,
can provide. And being that Samantha has done this for a while and gotten significant results with the program she's created and the people that she's worked with, I thought, hey, why not have her on the show and like really have her go deep into what that is and how
mm.
you and I can better incorporate this into our routines and whenever we need it. So, for those of you who don't know who Samantha is, she's the founder and CEO of Pause Breathwork. She's an international speaker, best-selling author, top-rated podcast host, and a coaching expert who is heart-centered and wanting to create impact all over the world. And she joins me on the podcast today. So I'm glad that you're here, and I have
Thank
some
you.
rapid-fire questions for you.
Let's go.
Okay, first question is, where were you born and raised?
Vancouver, Canada.
Mm. What is a philosophy that you live by?
Everything is happening for me in perfect timing.
That. What is a recent book that you've read that has offered immense value?
I'm reading a book called The Gift right now, and it was written by Gandhi's grandson and went through all of these beautiful stories about Gandhi and him living with Gandhi. And it was just, it's gold. It's like
Mm,
simple and gold. Mhm.
love that. What is a piece of advice that you've received that has served you well?
Nothing really matters and everything matters simultaneously. It's a weird situation.
I got it. Got it. I'm interested to see how that plays out for you, like how you use that, because I do
Mm,
think that there's a lot of contradictions and or a lot of like oxymorons that
yeah.
life provides, and there's beauty in that. What is a belief of yours that has supported your growth?
Every point of pain is an invitation for deeper expansion. Pain is our greatest teacher.
Mm, I love that one. And last one is, what does the world need more of right now?
Breath work.
Awesome. Well, so let's start there, right? Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into this? Why was it so important?
Mm.
And why is it such a big part of your life now?
So I grew up as a dancer and a child actress. And so my entire life was either on a stage or in front of a camera. And being in the entertainment industry at such a young age, it comes with a lot of pressure and it comes with a lot of stress. And when I was really young, like I can remember, like one of the things that I love doing even now is having a bath every single night. Like it just relaxes me. I feel calm if I don't have a bath and like go in the hot tub or something. And I remember being 12 years old and being in the bath and just having this moment of like, I really don't like my body. Like I had like severe body image issues and body dysmorphia and all sorts of things growing up. Now, it didn't manifest into disordered eating till much later, but through the ages of 18 to 23, I had a lot of issues with food and anxiety and again, body image issues and things like this. And I remember knowing better, but not understanding how to change my behavior.
Mm,
So I really grew up in personal development. My dad, I was like really young, and my dad would listen to like Tony Robbins tapes in the car. And so I was around personal development my entire life. And it's interesting to know everything, but then to still be stuck in an experience where I can't get over it. And so that was my experience through like 18, 19, 20, where I'm like, I know what I'm doing is not progressing my evolution and my transformation, but like I can't. It was almost like I was addicted to my own suffering.
mm-hmm.
And so during that time period, I remember reading the book Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And for those of you guys who know that book, you know what I'm talking about. But there's this one part of the book where she goes to Bali. She finds this medicine man, and she has some like life altering experiences. So I said to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I've tried all these things here in Vancouver, like doctors and therapists and things like that. I'm like, I feel like I need to go to Bali and do what she did. My mom's like, okay. So I booked a one-way ticket to Bali and I found this medicine man. And he basically at the end of our session, he was like, you just think too much. Like, you need to go meditate. You need to like just relax. And meditation at this time felt excruciating because I hated being in my body and I hated the feeling of feeling my emotions. I was either like numb or I was anxious. Like, those are the two sort of resting positions that I was in. Like, I was either numbed out or anxious. So I followed his advice and I'm like, okay, let me try this thing out. Let me try meditation out. And I went to a meditation school. And there was actually no meditation class at the time that I showed up, but there was a breathwork class. And like everyone, when they hear about breathwork for the first time, they're like, what can that really do? Like, what? You're just breathing. Like, I'm like, I've been breathing for 19 years. I'm like, I don't think this is going to help, but I'm here. This is the only class that is here. Let's just do it. And so I get into the class and everyone's already in the class. Everyone's lying down with their pillows and their blankets. And I walk in and the teacher comes up to me. He's dressed all in white, has this big long beard. He looks like Jesus or something. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Are you ready to go on the ride of your life?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You are going to feel the entire range of human emotion, the entire spectrum from joy and bliss and ecstasy to releasing and shedding and like releasing sadness and pain." Mind you, this is when I felt two things, numbness and anxiety. So I was like, this bro doesn't know what he's talking about, but I will give this a try. And so we lie down and he taught the breath pattern, which was 2 into the mouth, 1 out. And within a few minutes, my body felt electric. I felt alive. I was shedding pain. I was crying. And I'm like, I don't even know why I'm crying. And then the next moment, I'm like laughing. Is this a drug trip? Like, what is happening here? This is so fascinating. And it was a 3-hour experience that felt like 15 minutes. And I woke up from this experience and I was like, why does the whole world not know that we have the ability to do this? Like, why does humanity suffer so much when we realize that we can actually just feel incredible through the power of our breath every minute of every day? And everyone has access to this. And so I used breathwork to heal my eating disorder. And within 3 months, I felt like a completely different person. And then I just became so obsessed with breathwork. I never had the intention of teaching it. I never had the intention of starting Pause Breathwork. I just wanted to be a student. So I researched every guru and every teacher I possibly could. This was like 14 years ago now. And I was just in love with it. I was just a student of it. And then 8 years later, that's when I got like the download to be like, okay, you need to teach the world to breathe. This is what it's called. It was like so clear. It was like one of those like God moments where I'm like, okay, I get it. This is what I'm meant to do. And that was sort of the birth of Pause. And here we are.
Yeah. The numbing and the anxiousness that you were living in, I can relate to a lot of that. Anxiousness being more so. I think by nature I am anxious, like through neurofeedback and having my brain like looked at, I'm
Yeah.
on the more anxious side. I think
Yeah.
there's ways of channeling that to be effective or productive or focused or whatever, but I do find that is that's what I wrestle with, right? Where to dial it up or dial it down depending on what's
Mm.
needed. And breath work, from the limited experiences that I've never had a bad experience. They've all been transformative in some way, whether it's releasing something or helping me understand more of my body.
Mm.
When it comes to what you experienced on that day and then the subsequent months that helped you, get to a new place mentally,
Mm.
emotionally, physically, when you had those anxious moments, right?
Mm.
Where it was a thought process or someone triggered you or you were in a
Mm.
situation, like what was your process
Yeah.
to get yourself to calm down?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to back up and then I'm going to go forward. So when humans are triggered, they kind of go one out of two ways, right? They either go anxious. Me and you are the same in that. Like, we run fast, we go quick, we go anxious. So it'll go like anxious, or the system will go into a collapse. It'll go into like a depressed state. Typically, those are the two places. Sometimes people have both. It's either like, have you ever watched Winnie the Pooh? It's like either like Tigger, like ah, or it's like Eeyore, like right. So it's like one of the two. So depending on what state we're in and what the energetic state of the nervous system is, then we choose a breath pattern to be to be supportive to that energetic state.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, it depends on what I'm feeling, right? So if I'm feeling super anxious and my nervous system is really activated, I wouldn't do an activating, energizing breathwork pattern
Right.
because that's just gonna ride the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, even more. And so an example of an energizing, activating breath session or breath work would be that double inhale, that really elongated, powerful exhale. That's going to drive the nervous system into that sympathetic state, which is, again, going to create more activation, more anxiety. So, not the move. If we're feeling anxious, the best thing to do is really deep in through the nose and then exhale. So, we're going depth over speed, and that exhale is longer than the inhale. What that's going to do is it's going to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And then we're going to go more into that rest and digest. So even like 2 minutes of that can take us from that activated state into a calm, relaxed state. Now, if someone is feeling depressed, collapsed, the energy is sort of turning in on the body,
Mm-hmm.
then a breath pattern like the triactive breath, which is the one that I did earlier, that can add more energy, can add more life force, can help bring that out of a collapse, out of like the disassociation, the numbness, into bringing more energy into the body. And then from there, we can go from that breath pattern into like a more grounding one, just depending on
Yeah.
breath work is all about like learning how to listen to your system and give it what it needs in that moment. That's
Right.
why I love it so much. It's not like one size fits all. So on our app, depending on what that individual needs, there's different breath patterns that can influence the journey. There's different music there's different mantras. Again, speed is an amplifier or a grounder. So there's different elements to the session, but it can all be shifted depending on what we need.
In your experience with working with as many clients as you have you seen a tendency for a majority of people to lean towards the anxiousness or towards the more like sad, depressive kind of energy?
Anxiousness, and I think because your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah, for sure, for
And
sure.
so, like, I'm a very energetic, when I do get triggered, I do lean anxious. And I also work with a ton of high achievers. The majority of the clients that I have are life coaches, health coaches, business coaches, like people who are coaches who want to add breathwork into their businesses. So I work with a lot of business owners. I work with a lot of high
Mhm.
achievers. And naturally, what I've seen in my experience is those folks just are the ones that are a little bit more anxious, and we
Yeah.
just do life a little bit more on high speed. So it's truly about how can we learn to regulate the nervous system so that we can really tap into our power, because we're really not powerful when we're anxious. It kind of depletes us, you know.
Mm, mm. When I think some people don't understand the true importance of breath work as far as like stats go and how many aspects of it support so many different areas of your whole like your well-being. What
Mm.
are some stats that you've learned or some things that you're like, wow, breath work helps with this? I had no idea that kind
Mm.
of like were shocking to you and also maybe shocking to some of your clients.
Yeah, I love this question. So our typical market for our app is anxiety and sleep. So if you're anxious, do breath work. If you can't sleep and you have insomnia, do breath work. So it's sort of like that's the pain point essentially.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there's a whole body of work that has so much evidence, and there's more and more scientific studies being done around this, how breathwork has such a incredible scientific impact on our physiology and our ability to have a healthier body and reduce inflammation, and there's just a whole other like physical health benefits. So
Mhm.
we have that, and then we also have using breath work to tap into our life force. So not necessarily getting us out of a bad spot, but just amplifying us into greatness. Right? I'm seeing the book Good to Great behind you, right? It's like it's like, yeah, we're good here. Like, oh, I feel pretty good. But how can we use breath work to amp our energy and our creativity and our love and our ability to have, these abundant, beautiful, energetic lives? And how can we add more richness, more energy, more everything? And so it's like using breath work as an amplifier to what is already good, not necessarily coming out of a bad spot. So there's so many ways in which that we can use this. For a lot of our community is Christian, right? So it's like using breath work to connect deeper with God, because when we do breath work, we release the mind, we clear the mind, we open up our body, and there's direct connection. And maybe God's your word, maybe universe is your word, maybe life force is your word, whatever word you want to put on that. Allowing yourself to get out of your own way, get out of the ego, get out of the fear, and really connect with like the deeper truth of why we're all here and who we all are.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So the one of the things that I saw on your Instagram that I really liked was breath work and fat loss.
Yeah.
That was interesting, and I know that my mind was like, oh, I'm gonna ask her about this. So
Yeah.
tell me more about what you've learned with that.
People think that you lose weight through sweating, but you actually lose way more weight through, like, it comes out of your breath. So if we can learn to use our breath so two things, right? We help with the process, the detoxing process, when we breathe more. When we are emotionally constipated and we're not allowing life force to come in our body's just not working as well. So when we open up and let go and we allow the breath to move through, we're going to help the natural process of our body just work better. So that's the first thing. The second thing is physical weight on our body is often tied to emotional weight. Right. My previous company was called Hungry for Happiness. And the mission of Hungry for Happiness was helping women and men who struggle with emotional eating and body image issues and things like that. And so when we have emotional weight on our body, it manifests as physical weight. So if we can use breath work to clear out our emotional weight, the body's going to respond to that. And so those are the two ways where we can shift our body. And it's so funny because, sometimes people do need that vanity metric in order to get them to do something. I know so many of my clients are like, I would never do breath work to release anxiety, but like, tell me I'm going to look better and I'm here for it. And so like, that's sort of like the gateway to get them to do breath work. And once they do it, they realize like, oh my goodness gracious, there is so much more to this than just weight loss.
Mm-hmm. Have you read the book Breathe by James Nestor?
He was on my podcast. I read that book. He's amazing.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so good. And the difference between mouth breathing and nasal breathing, and like just that subtle of a shift, and how game changing that is.
Yeah, totally. Him and I actually, because a lot of our questions were like, James says, don't breathe through your mouth. And so I'm like, James, let's talk about this for a second.
Yeah, right.
And
Right.
I was like, what's the actual, like, what do you believe is the actual thing? I'm like, do you think that we should not do breath work through the mouth? And he was like, no, it's fine to do that, but don't do that 95% of the time. Right. So
Exactly.
it's like people who are breathing through their mouth the majority of their day, that's an issue. But if you're using your mouth, because it does increase your lung capacity and you can get more oxygen in, therefore you have a better experience, a more intensified experience. Like that's going to do more than like through the nose. But that's fine for the small amount of time that we are doing that. I think he calls it like breath X or something. He calls breath work for transformation, breathing X or something like that. But yeah, typically breathe through your nose.
Yeah. I think highly correlated to this is the masculine and feminine polarities that we have inside of all of us. I know you've mentioned this in some of your content, and how you typically were more aligned with the masculine, the driving, the going, the
Yeah.
getting here to there as quickly, as efficiently as possible, and now welcoming more of that feminine aspect, the slowing down, the adventurous, maybe more present, expansive part of you. How has that been,
Yeah.
coming from such a anxious, like high energy, let's go frame of mind?
Yeah.
How hard was that transition for you to make, and where are you now with it?
Yeah, it was pretty much excruciating.
Because you tell someone who moves quickly to slow down, it's like, why would
Yeah.
I do that? I get less done.
Mm.
I can't get to where I want to go the time I
Mm.
said I want to.
Yeah. Well, I grew up as someone who was always acknowledged for my achievement. So achievement meant love in my brain, right? In my nervous system. It's like, well, when I work hard and I achieve and I book that role or I get first or I do this, then I am loved. And that's sort of the correlation I made. So I that translated into business for me. It's like when I win, I am loved. And it was this really important opportunity for me to completely break that, because the truth was, is like, I was getting burnt out. I was overworking. I was not fulfilled. I was not happy. It's like, yes, I was achieving, but I was achieving in a way that was not great. You know, it's like, if the journey doesn't feel like the destination, something's going wrong. And so there's that beautiful quote, like, don't lose the forest for the trees. Like, I was so focused on this thing that I missed the bigger picture. And so it must have been like 6 years ago or something, when I started Pause. I made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to run this company like I did my old one, Hungry for Happiness, and I was going to do it from a place of balance, from a regulated nervous system, from a place of pausing, reflecting. Busyness is not productive. You know, the ego thinks it is, but an 18-hour day where I'm jacked in my nervous system and I'm just racing and I'm not present, that the quality of work is going to go down the drain. And so my commitment to my work now is that I work way less and I work on my energy more than my strategy. And I'm not trying to go fast because I'm in it for the long game. Like, I've already decided, Pause will be a $1 billion company one day. We will help billions of people. I don't need to do it all today. And so if I can do it from this place of ease and power and presence, and I'm actually taking a moment and closing my eyes and just thinking about the moves as if it's a chess game, and I'm being mindful that people receive my work at the energetic transmission it was created in. So if I'm creating my work from a place of hustle, grind, force, push, that's fundamentally against what I teach. I teach breathwork. I teach, peace and connection and coherence. And so it's really taught me, like, Pause, the company of Pause, the mission of Pause continually teaches me every single day how to be back in alignment, not rush, do things with presence, do things with pure intention, do things with um, energy, like powerful energy. And so it's a practice every single day, because I have to be mindful, because my inner programming system is always like, let's go fast and let's do it all today. And yes, Rome actually was built in a day. Get me that by 5. You know what I mean? So it's like let's add some more breath, let's add some more spaciousness. So it's a practice, but it's what I've proven to myself is, when I slow down, I actually speed up. Like, Pause has grown so much, and we continue to grow year after year. And it's not through force and hustle and push and grinding. It's through creating an energetically rich environment for my team members, for myself, for my students, that we can all thrive in.
I do believe a lot of that, because now in my kind of career, where I'm at is I'm out of the grassroots hustle build phase, and I'm now in the more of like being more strategic, being more artistic, being more in alignment with who I am, as opposed to maybe copying or mirroring elements of what inspired me initially. Like, I'm stepping
Yeah.
more into my own, right? And with that comes and also having 2 kids. Crazy schedule to manage, right? And so that's forced me to find a new way of operating. And a lot of the times it is working on the energy before the strategy. I liked that line that you said. And when the energy's right, the strategy comes through and things happen faster because there's less resistance.
Yeah.
But sometimes I love the resistance because I've gotten so much value from it, right? I felt
Mm-hmm.
stronger. I feel like I'm building character. I feel like uh, I learn more in the resistance than I do in the alignment. And
Yep.
I've had to really look at that, hold that, and say,
Mm.
is that true? Or can there be other ways of learning just as much with less effort? And it's more
And I
still.
and I think it's both. And I think there's a big difference between resistance from suffering and resistance from alignment. We can get so addicted to suffering that we think we need the resistance in order to get through the thing, in order to achieve the thing and get the carrot, which comes from a wound, versus the necessary resistance that is required for us to evolve into our next level from
Mm-hmm.
alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think discerning the difference between those two things is one of our greatest skills that we can learn, right? Because
Yeah.
living, like, running an aligned business doesn't mean there's never going to be resistance. It's the
Right.
right type of resistance in order for us to evolve.
For you, what does that feel like when you have the aligned
Mm.
resistance as opposed to maybe the manufactured or forceful
Yeah.
resistance that does need to be there?
Yeah. So Friday, I was having a conversation with one of my directors, my one of my directors on my team, and we were in a meeting, and I was just getting so frustrated. I'm like, I feel so annoyed right now by you, and I feel so like, ugh, like you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're not, whatever it is, whatever. I was just feeling like there was like resistance there. So I left the meeting. He clearly knew I was pissed. I sat with it and I was like, okay, Sam, what's going on here? Like, what is this calling me forth into? And I just got to sit with it and ask myself, what kind of leader would handle this? Like the leader that I'm stepping into in the next level, how would she deal with this? And let me go back and have a do-over. So yesterday, so I didn't talk to him on Friday, but I talked to him yesterday. And I was like, yo, I just want to name, like, how I showed up in that meeting wasn't my highest. I could have been more curious. I could have been more compassionate, but here's my experience. I felt really unheard by you, and I felt like you weren't really hearing where I was coming from. Whether that was true or not, I take full ownership for my experience. So do you know what I'm saying now? So
Mhm.
it's like that was resistance. That was like, oh, I didn't want to have that conversation. It was a courageous conversation, but it broke me through to us having a deeper relationship, more transparency, and more connection. So that would be an example of like the necessary resistance that the universe
Mhm.
gives us in order to evolve, right? Because as Pause is evolving, and as we're growing and impacting more people, it's like it's only going to evolve at the rate that I evolve. And so if I'm not committed to constantly using, I call it content, using that content to evolve, then we're gonna stay stuck in the no one wins, right? So
Yeah.
that would be an example of like resistance for transformation, like aligned resistance, and then resistance from a place of suffering would be, and I also have an example for this. Um, I had someone on my team who I just knew in my heart was not a culture fit. Her numbers were really good, and that can sometimes be a hard call as a leader to let go of someone who's a real high performer and bringing in revenue. And so I kept her on the team, and there was just so much resistance because she wasn't a culture fit and she wasn't collaborating and she wasn't connecting and she was bringing the wrong energy. But I was like, I'm going to push through this because I'm going to make sure like she's going to get there one day, and I just
Mhm.
like held on and 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 held on to the point where I was like, this girl's got to go, and it's like that. I was unnecessary putting myself and the team in suffering for no reason.
Mm.
So that would be
Yeah.
the nuance there.
I like that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a real experience that a lot of people have. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
common challenge. It's like they are producing, but they're not supportive to the environment.
Yeah, which is
What
a
do you
cancer. It's a cancer to the environment. You got to let
right?
those people go. Yeah.
As hard as it might be, like
Yeah.
your business might drop 20%, but
Mhm.
then there's new space for someone else to rise up or someone else who is equally as skilled to
Mm.
enter the company. But until then, the space is occupied in a lot of
100%.
ways.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what type of with your programs that you create, you have a facilitator program.
Mhm.
What is the biggest breakthrough or what do you look for in a facilitator? What should someone look for in themselves if they want to step into a role and facilitate more breath work for their loved ones, for their
Mm.
company, for maybe a business that they want to create? What is
Yeah.
something that they should be thinking about?
I really believe people who are here to help others know it from the day that we're born. You
Mm,
know, like if I was to go deep on your story and ask you those questions, I'm sure you feel similarly. I feel like we all sort of decide we're going to do this work before we come to this planet in some weird way. And then being here is navigating our way back to our truth to be in alignment with what our soul is here to do. And so the people that I work with are the ones who know that in their body, like I am here to help people. And maybe you're the type of person, if you're listening to this, you are that go-to person that people come to for advice, or you're always desiring to help and it feels good to help. And whenever we're doing something that feels so alive and exciting, that's when we're on path and that's when we're on purpose. And so the clients that we work with are people who have that inner knowing, that inner calling, like, I know I am meant to do this work in the world. I just haven't found the right vehicle to do it. So the two types of people that do the facilitator training, number one, they have that deep knowing,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't done anything yet. And so they'll do the program and then they'll start a breathwork business, or they'll teach corporate breathwork, or they'll do group programs or retreats. The other type of person that comes in is someone who's already a coach, already a mindset coach or a health coach or an executive coach, and they want to use breathwork as a tool to get their clients better transformations and ultimately grow their business. And so those are the two types of people that join the program. I remember I was working at a restaurant. I was probably like 23 or something, and my life did not look like my vision of my life, if you know what I mean. So I was
Mm-hmm.
working at this restaurant. I was making like $30,000 a year, but in my heart, I was like, I'm not meant to be here. Like, this is the wrong movie. I am meant to help people. I am meant to serve. I am meant to grow this beautiful, coaching business and bringing people back into their truth. And again, I had that knowing, but my reality wasn't a representation of that. And I just had to believe in myself and believe in that inner whisper above all of the noise that said, you can't do that, everyone else is already doing that. And today that reality is manifested, that reality of, wow, I do get to run this beautiful organization and employ 20 people to do what they love and help thousands of people all around the world. And so listen to that, like that's like the inner wisdom that we have. And if we get quiet enough and still enough to listen to that, that is
Mm-hmm.
the thing that is constantly directing us. It's not the noise, it's the inner voice.
I love that. Thank you for
Mm.
sharing that. What do you think the biggest challenges that we face in our society, at least in the Western world, that breath work supports and helps solve, or at least minimize, at the very least?
Disconnection from source is the source of all suffering. So when we have a tool that is literally right under our nose, that brings us back into connection with ourself, with each other, with our creator, that is what gives us life. That's what gives us life force. And there's two things in life, and they have like an interesting relationship. We have problems and we have energy. The lower our energy is, the more intense our problems feel, right? The higher our energy, the lower our problems feel. And so our job is to constantly increase our energy, increase our internal thermometer, becoming more aligned and more connected and more aware and more loving and more powerful and more potent and more sure of ourselves and more empowered, so that when problems arise, because problems are inevitable, if everyone has problems all the time, right? But what's our relationship to those problems and how do we view them? If we're viewing them from this energetically rich place, the problems of life are like, oh, that's a problem, let me find a solution and let me move through that, versus like, oh no, my life is over, this is so intense. And so my job is to teach my students how to have energetically rich systems and mindsets so that they can navigate life with so much more ease.
Yeah, the disconnection to self or source is definitely something I see too, and that like it manifests into a dysfunctional relationship or bad business decisions, or just not committed to staying committed to goals, and just because you don't have the bandwidth or the capacity. And sitting with self through breath work, I think,
Mm,
does slow things down enough for you to recognize where the leaky faucets are, and injecting your body with more oxygen and allowing it to do what it's
mm.
designed to do, heals and patches up a lot of those leaks.
That's
and
so true.
and that's what I felt through breath
Mm.
work, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. And with the connection to source piece, like, do you find that when you get there, and you're truly connected, that you
Mhm.
as an identity, you as a
Mm.
person is kind of vanishes.
Yeah.
Everything is one. Is that what you find, or is there something out
Mm.
different?
It feels, yeah, it's like this disassociation from my identity and my
Mhm.
ego and my labels and my, the labels I have on myself, like I'm a this, I'm a fiance, I'm a CEO, I'm a this, like all of that just dissipates.
Yeah.
And there's this awareness of myself, but it's this true self that doesn't need anything in order to be full, to feel full. And then there's this infinite connection to everything,
Yes.
knowing that I am a part of everything, like everything. I'm a part of that tree. I'm a part of like I'm a part of life. And
Yes.
so it's this beautiful experience of non-attachment to anything in the external material world and this deep connection to life itself.
Also called, like, in my mind, that's flow in a lot of
Yeah,
ways, right?
yes. Yes, yes,
And
yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
thinking about it in the context of a conversation, right? If I'm
Mm,
thinking about all the titles that I am, how much money I have in the bank, what do I have to do after this conversation, what this person thinks of me, what's at stake if that
mm,
doesn't go the way I think it should go. All of
mhm.
that is not connecting to source, because there's a lot of, materialistic, dense
Yeah.
concepts that are interfering with the true connection that's, I think, trying to be established in that interaction.
Mm,
And one of the ways to get to that source that you're talking about is through breath. And if one can get there, when one gets there, those things that, let's say, are important
mm.
fall away, and they're not the priority. The priority is
Yeah.
establishing the connection to what's happening, to who you're talking to, so much so that the information being given and received
Mm.
is optimal, right? And then from
Yeah.
there, like, then the direction can go. But
Yeah.
until then, there's
Yeah.
always going to be a distortion,
Yes.
you know?
100%. It's so interesting. The ego mind wants to externalize and put band-aids on bullet wounds on external things in our life. Like, oh, I have a problem with business. Let me fix it. I have a
Mhm.
problem with my finances. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. And we're trying to like we have this inner doer who's like doing, doing,
Yes.
doing, 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 when really our entire life is one big hologram. And so it's not about fixing the thing that's already manifested. It's about finding what created that thing within us and healing that from the inside out, like shifting the hologram from the inside out. I do a
Yes.
lot of work with my students on their relationship to money. Like once they come through our training and they're like, okay, I'm ready to start a business. But if you have a jacked up money story, it's going to be really hard for you to receive abundance. It's going to be really hard for you to ask for money, especially asking for money doing something that you love, right? Because the narrative is like work really hard and then make money, whereas like the new way is like do what you love and share your genius and receive a lot of money in return. And so that's not about fixing our money externally. It's about how can I shift my level of receptivity internally and my level of deserving internally, and how can I get myself into this place where it feels so good to receive money for the doing the work that I love. And
Yes.
so yeah, that I love doing that work with my students. It's just so fun, and their money stories and their money situations just completely shift when we do that.
If you were to focus on unworthiness for a moment, because I feel like a lot of people
Mm,
have that, whether that manifests into like an inferiority complex or a desire to want to prove their worth to someone to get validation, whatever the case, unworthiness being the center of it. Do you have any like examples of like someone that you've helped work through that, and maybe by providing that example, someone who's listening that resonates with that can begin, embodying some of those thought
mm,
processes, or maybe even the breath that you shared with that client or person,
mm.
as a form of like, here's one way to go about it.
Yeah. So a lot of our students come to us and they're mindset coaches or whatever it is, and they
Mhm.
think that they are the ones doing the work. Right. So they come in and they're like, I'm afraid to do a session because I don't know if I'm good enough and I don't know if I'm going to have the right answer. And it comes from this place of like, I don't feel good enough to
Yeah.
actually change this person's life. Where the way that breath work works, the way that we work is it's actually not about you. It's about holding the space and creating an environment where that person can move through whatever they need to move through, and whatever arises in the session, you are there to help support them and move that energy through the body. So it's not you doing anything. So it takes the relationship out of the, it's all about me and I need to have the right answers and I got to do the right job, which brings us into the state of like scarcity, into I am here to be fully present with you, to fully support you, to support you getting into your breath, to get into those pockets of trauma, releasing them and letting them go and unpacking all of that content inside of our body so that we can fully heal and move on to the next level. So it takes it out of the worthiness. And then, you know, worthiness is such an interesting thing. It's like, well, I remember being like 12 years old at the dinner table, and my dad said to me, when you focus on service, you're never going to have to worry about money for the rest of your life. You're never going to have to worry about anything else. Like, just focus on service, focus on getting people repeatable results. I don't know why he was having this conversation with me at 12 years old, but for some reason it like stuck with me. And so that's my come from. I don't make it about myself. When someone joins my programs or they download the app, like my awareness is like, how can I get this person to remember how powerful they are in the quickest time possible? How can I help this person get to exactly what they want in the quickest time possible? Because then they can then do it for thousands of other people. And so it's not about me. It's about them. And when I turn it from me to them, I disassociate like worthiness from any external thing. Like, I really truly believe our worthiness is not negotiable. We can't do any, like, we are born worthy, we're going to die worthy, we are just simply worthy. Like, do we have parts and protectors and limiting beliefs and all that kind of crap that like put illusions on that and put, you know, kind of make it that a little bit foggy? Yes, but it's up to us to like sort through that and realize, like, no matter what I do, I'm still worthy. Like, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to screw up, and I'm going to forgive myself, and I'm going to heal through it, and I'm going to feel through it, and I'm going to be a stronger version of me after that.
Mm. The example, the yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I want to frame this question. The presence aspect, right? Presence is
Mm.
something that I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, first and foremost, and
Yeah.
then second to others. Presence in very extreme situations can be hard, but also easy in that the extremity of the extremeness of the situation can bring about who we are, right? Then
Mhm.
more so on the mundane, everyday, kind of like going through the motions, that's a bit harder to be
Mm.
present. With the breath and then the presence, there seems to be no story when you're there, but the presence is rooted in service, right? And then within the service comes skill to
Mhm.
some degree, some knowing that once the other person enters our presence, our space, we facilitate, we guide, we coach, we
Mm.
help nudge along. How much of the skill is required before the full presence can be leveraged in the best way? If that makes
That's a
sense.
great question. That's a great question. The thing that the body's always present. Our body's always present,
I love that.
right? Always. The thing that takes us as a present is the mind. And so when we lack confidence as a facilitator and as a guide, then we go up to our mind and we ask ourselves, am I doing this right? I tell my students all the time, if you are just simply present and you're there and you're looking someone in the eye and you're with them, you are doing it right. The skill is secondary.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, that's the greatest gift we could possibly give anyone. And in our hyper connected, super distracted, everyone's trying to steal our life force type of world that we live in,
For real.
truly the greatest gift is our full presence. I'm right here. I got you. What's up? I'm right here. I'm listening. You know, that's the greatest thing. Like, even my fiance, it's like when he gives me even 30 seconds of just pure presence, I'm like, that's all I need, bro. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I want to feel you feeling me for like 30 seconds, and that's, we're good.
Mm.
And so when it comes to working with clients, presence is so rare that if you give that to them, you're going to meet them. There's going to be rapport. There's going to be an energetic connection. And then from that place, you can layer on skill. From that place, you can layer on anything. But
Yes.
that's the prerequisite. That's the most important thing.
Otherwise, how do you know what skill to build?
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like when it's
Exactly.
like there's no, you're removing as many filters as possible when you're present to get the true source of the information.
And embodiment is also the other side of presence. Because in order for us to be fully present, we have to be embodied. And that's those two things are in connection too. It's like the more embodied we are, the more present we can become.
Okay. Tell me, like, I know what I think embodiment means. In your
Yeah.
mind, how would you, because I know there's a lot of people that talk about that.
Mm,
What's your kind of definition
mm.
for what embodiment is?
It's like a typical relationship without embodiment is just a transfer of knowledge through the mind, right? Right? It's like and it's one dimensional. There's no energy there. There's no energy when we do that. When we are focused on our hearts and we even like bring our awareness down to our heart, it's like, oh, there's a different vibration there, and now I am bringing a different layer of connection to this relationship. And then when we bring our energy down to our bellies and our energy down to our root, and we're just like, we're here,
Mm-hmm.
agendaless. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say after as you're talking. I'm just fully receiving what you're sharing with every part of my body, not just my mind to like calculate and judge and figure out and what am I going to say. It's like I'm just fully present
Hmm.
to what you're sharing with no agenda.
The agendalessness,
Yeah.
I think, is beautiful, but a lot of people struggle with that.
Mm.
Why is it that we always think, or at least most of the time, that we need an agenda? Like maybe that's cultural
Question.
conditioning, but like, what else do you think?
It's a great question. I think we live in a society where we're valued for having the right answers and doing it right. Like there's this rightness that is in our culture, and we all grew up in, well, a lot of people grew up in like the school system
Mm-hmm.
where it's like you have to have the right answer. Give me the right answer. Like you can't just say nothing. You have to come in with a plan. It's like that's the masculine, right? It's like do 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 do.
Yes. Yes.
And so us just being open to the arising of what is arising and how does the energy want to flow? Like that's the spaces that get so interesting. So I teach my students, go into your breathwork sessions agendaless and let the energy inform you where the session wants to go. Now, that for a lot of people is terrifying because they're like, well, if I
Absolutely.
don't have the right answer, then they're going to think that I suck. And if I suck, they're not going to hire me. And
Right.
it's this whole thing. So it's a practice.
Yeah.
I remember I used to script out all of my talks. I do a lot of stage speaking. So I used to script it out. And one of my friends, Kyle Cease, was like, dude, do an event, book an event, sell it out, and show up with nothing prepared. I was like, you're nuts, but I'm going to try this. And so I did. I ran this event in 2018 called Untangled. It was up in Vancouver, 250 people there. I showed up and I'm like, I have nothing planned. They didn't know that. I did. And it was the best thing ever because I could use the energy from like, what do they need? What are they asking for? What's going on here? Why, and the context was like, it was called Untangled. So it's like untangle everything you're not to find out who you are. And it was brilliant. It was so fun. It was the most fun I had. So now I barely script my keynotes. There's time like I have like my stories and my teaching points, but then I kind of like riff off the audience and the the energy of what they need because that's information.
Yes. And you're also leaping into the unknown. Like
Yeah,
you don't know what's going to happen. And what's fueling the leaping into the unknown is an investment in helping people. And regardless of how hard or how dicey or how complex it might get in that unknown, you're here for it. So
yeah,
there's a no turning back
yep.
vibe that I'm getting
Mm,
from you, and I can relate to this because I do that as well. Like that, I think that is necessary to be able to leverage all the intelligence that's happening in the moment
yeah,
through the
yes,
presence, right? Like it's like,
yes,
I don't know how this
yes,
is going to go, but I'm not
yes.
going backwards, and I'm fully committed to
Mm,
receiving and feeling and sensing and trusting the gut on where to take it. And by
yeah,
one step at a time, it like unfolds to make this beautiful picture. And
dude.
almost like your presence becomes infectious to the point where everyone else just falls into your presence. So everyone is present, all co creating the same quote unquote reality
Yeah.
in the moment. Just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yes. So, three things I want to say about that. So, number one, when you have presence, you don't have anxiety. Presence, pure presence, and anxiety cannot coexist together. So
Amen.
I think that's like a really beautiful thing. And then my relationship to uncertainty used to be, if it's uncertain, it's scary. I'm going to die. I'm going to lose everything. People are going to hate me. Like that used to be my relationship to uncertainty. Well, we can decide our relationships moment by moment to anything. So the relationship I decided to create with uncertainty, which by the way is where all the freaking magic is
Yeah.
in uncertainty. That's possibility. That's creation. That's like co-creating with the universe, co-creating with God. Like that's where creativity lives. I think the book you have behind you is Rick Rubin.
Yes.
Yeah. So like he talks about that a lot. It's like, how can we bring our energy to something and co-create with the divine to bring something new to this universe that hasn't been here yet? We can't do that if we go in with a plan. We can't do that if we go in with the agenda. We are fundamentally ignoring the energetics, the intelligence that is present in that present moment by masking and putting our structure on top of it.
Yes. I love that. Seth Godin has another similar quote. Uh, what is, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, plans fail, but missions don't.
Ooh, dang. Let's go, Seth.
Like plans are helpful in that it helps you think through
Mm,
potentials. But at the end of the day, I haven't heard of a plan that has ever been executed the way that it was originally intended. Right. So just embedded into the nature of a plan is that it's not going to go according to plan.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Right. And there's
Totally.
beauty in that. But if your
Mm.
plan is attached to a mission, you don't abort the mission just because the plan didn't work.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, I can feel that as it pertains to my personal life, and I can feel that as it pertains to my organization. Like our mission, one of our values is mission centered. So like
Mm,
everything that we do orients back to like the mission, helping a billion people with breathwork, right? Boom, boom. Like we're so committed to that. But sometimes our plans are way better than we expected, and then sometimes it's way worse. But it's
hmm.
okay because we don't internalize it and be like, oh no, we suck. It's still like, oh, we are still making headway on our mission, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Couple more questions for you. What do you think the difference is between expectations and intentions?
Expectation has attachment, intention has flow.
Mm,
That's kind of how I define it.
yeah.
If I have an expectation, then I have an attachment to how that needs to go. So then I'm going to get into worry and control and fear versus like, this is my intention. And like this or something even better. Like it
Yeah.
could be even better than I could possibly imagine. Like um Eric and I are getting married in about a year, and I had this like big vision for like our wedding and like what I wanted to do. And I was like searching and searching and searching, and I'm like, man, I can't find like the venue that would like accommodate the desire and the vision that I had. And I'm just gonna let it go. Like if it's meant to be, it'll come to me. So like my intention is still there, but I'm letting go of whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And then like a couple days ago, we found out that like the exact type of venue that we desired to have for our wedding is literally 2 minutes away from the Airbnb that we have in Idlewild, California. It's just wild. I'm
Mm,
like, there we go. Like if I was attached, like da, 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 and I was so attached, I would have crunched the energy and I wouldn't allow the magic to flow in.
yes. Yes. I love that.
Mm.
Is there My last question for you is there anything that you haven't talked about on a podcast ever or in a while that you feel you want to create space for now? And if so, what is it?
Ooh. Ooh. Mm. Yeah, this feels alive. This feels alive. So I grew up in a very Christian home, church on Sundays, Sunday school, the whole thing. And then when I was 18 or so, I was like, fuck it. I was like, I don't want to do any of that. Stupid. All
Don't
the
want
rules.
structure anymore. I want
Yeah,
freedom.
yeah, exactly. It's like, so I was like, I'm gonna do life by myself and I'm gonna figure it out. And I was like totally like free balling for a few years. Then I kind of found more of like I don't know, like what do you call it? Like new agey type stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
And then now I'm in this place of like, what's the truthful integration that feels aligned and congruent for me in this phase of my life, with like the integration of like everything that I've learned from, like, I guess the new age world, and then everything that I've learned in Christianity. Like, how can I have a relationship with God without it having like the structure of religion? And how can I bring in the elements of new age without being dependent on those things, like tarot cards and crystals and things like that, for instance? And like, how can I find like my personal power in those two things? That's kind of what I'm in exploration of right now.
Mm. And building your own framework for what
Yeah.
supports you the best.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like what feels free and alive and connected and supportive to my human experience.
Yeah. And that's what Bruce Lee did with his martial arts.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Take what works and
Yeah.
discard the rest, you know?
Uh-huh. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Samantha, thank you for your time, your dedication to the craft, your message. I do believe that breathwork does need to be talked about even more than it already is, and integrated at some
Mhm.
level daily, if not weekly at the worst, for those, for all of us.
Mhm.
So is there anything that you want to first tell us where the best place to get in
Mhm.
contact with you is? Obviously there'll be the links in the notes, but where's the best place, and any last minute words before we wrap up?
Yeah. So for those of you who desire to become breathwork facilitators or want to go on the app, you can go to pausebreathwork.com. My Instagram is at Samantha Skelly, and then pause is pause breathwork. So those are probably the best places.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Any last minute words?
Mm. For every point of suffering you have in your body, you have the antidote, you have the remedy. And so just remembering that through the breath, we can feel through all of those places and actually integrate them back into our wholeness day by day, moment by moment, breath by breath. Like you are the drug.
Mm. Samantha, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.